It was, does the same willingness extend to allowing the Cuban people to speak freely, form opposition parties, and vote in free, fair elections? That was my question.
Gang, what's up? Aaron here, Canadian Looney. Smash that like, hit subscribe. Let's get straight into the video. Canadian federal politics are absurd. Let's kick it off.
Ambassador, Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International, and independent Cuban dissidents report hundreds of political prisoners, systemic arbitrary arrest, torture, and the complete absence of free speech or independent media. Could you tell us how many political prisoners does your government currently hold, and when will every one of them be released?
Point d'ordre, Monsieur le Président.
Point of order, Mr. Chair. Point of order. Like we were saying a little while ago, the idea today is to talk about consular services and the humanitarian crisis. But are we really here outside of the scope here of humanitarian crisis and consular services?
The focus, again, just as I stated earlier, is to focus on the humanitarian situation on the ground in Cuba and consular services for Canadians. I would strongly urge members to try as much as they can to stay within those parameters. I'm happy to allow some room of discretion that is connected to that, but the further we go away from that, the more difficult it would be for me as chair to allow that. But please proceed.
Well,
Sorry.
thank you very much, Mr. Chair, but I would respectfully say that this does fall under a humanitarian crisis. We're talking about political prisoners, and it would be appreciated if the witness could answer the question.
Please proceed.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. Thank you, Chair. The issue of human rights has traditionally been manipulated against Cuba. In Cuba, no one is in prison for their beliefs, but for breaking the law. No one is in jail without having been tried following due process. Many of the so-called political prisoners have confessed to being paid agents in the service of a superpower that seeks to destroy the Cuban order. The revolution has a long history of human rights achievements, fundamental rights like universal education, free public health care, the end of discrimination based on race, sex, or sexual orientation. Cuba is also founding member of the United Nations Human Rights Council and cooperates with the periodic reviews in conduct of the human rights situation in our country. And I have to say that the true and massive threat to human rights in Cuba is the economic blockade by the U.S. Nowadays, we have a lot of problems in the hospitals, children that have no possibilities to receive the proper treatment to cancer or hemodialysis or things like that, simply because they are trying to asphyxiate our society. So we could talk about human rights for a long time, but I don't think we are perfect, but I don't think either that we should be pointed out on this. Thank you.
Well, Ambassador, it's interesting that you say that about the United States, because your government claims to be willing to talk to the United States as equals, and that's a quote from your own government. So I'm wondering, does that same willingness extend to allowing the Cuban people to speak freely, form opposition parties, and vote in free and fair elections, or is dialogue only acceptable when it helps preserve the current monopoly on power?
Point d'ordre, Monsieur le Président. Cette motion.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. This is there is a humanitarian crisis in Cuba right now, and this is what the motion is all about. And we're supposed to be looking at the different ways on how we can come in aid of the people who are living unprecedented humanitarian crisis. The idea here is that is why we're here. This is why we're all here today. There was a specific motion that was voted on by the committee because otherwise in the next sessions, we're going to be going all over the map and not respecting the spirit of things. And I'm not interested in that.
to the member, I would urge MP Rood to try to come back to the topic that was agreed to by all the members.
Quick reminder, gang, smash that like, hit subscribe if you're enjoying this video. Let's get back to it.
Thank you.
Well, Mr. Chair, I can think of no greater concern than the oppressive actions the socialist dictatorship imposes on its own people. So I will go back to the question again. Your government claims to be willing to talk to the United States as equals. So if you
The
could answer
dialogue
question.
between Cuba and the United States is I'm sorry, outside of the scope. I'm happy to allow some room away from the core issue, which is humanitarian condition, but the relationship and the dialogue between, if it exists, between the United States and Cuba, you would agree, MP would not be under the discussion, the topic, which is the humanitarian situation on the ground in Cuba. So I would urge you to probably rephrase the question.
Well, my question, Chair, was not about the United States. It was does the same willingness extend to allowing the Cuban people to speak freely, form opposition parties, and vote in free, fair elections? That was my question.
Okay. Mr. Ambassador?
Thank you, Honorable Lianne Rood, for the question. It's true that Cuba wants to speak as equals like with the United States and with other countries. Is our right, I believe. We are an independent country. And it's true that in Cuba we have only one political party. The thing is that the electoral system in Cuba, that by the way is quite similar to the Canadian one, parties don't nominate the persons to be candidates. They are nominated by the people. And directly, the political party doesn't take part on this. People in Cuba can speak freely, and they can express themselves freely. And actually, they do so normally in our democracy system. The parliament in Cuba is, the members of the parliament are elected in constituencies, like in Canada. The new parliament in assembly elects the head of government, who is not elected in a general vote by the entire population. The members of parliament serve for a period of 5 years, and the present assembly is the 10th legislature. Every system has its virtues and defects. I do not believe there is a perfect model. They generally reflect the history and tradition of each country and in laws. It is true that I respect your opinion. You can think differently than me on this, but in Cuba, campaigns do not involve expenses from the state budget or private sources. The candidates are elected or not through political propaganda, but based on their merits before the voters. And whoever wants to be a candidate can be it. It only needs the support of... Yes, but
Yes, my time is running out, though, Ambassador, and I do have one final question before the end of my time. Ambassador, Cuba has actively recruited its citizens, including civilians and members of its military and intelligence services, to fight for Russia and its illegal war against Ukraine. Does your government deny these reports? And if not,
so this was asked before as well. I let it slide then. I think that's out of scope. You would agree? Of course, you know, our collective
briefing note as a suggested question for the
exactly. It's in the briefing notes as a suggested question.
No, that could be a suggested question, but the war in Ukraine is not
in the official notes of the committee, and we are talking about humanitarian. So I think, given the day, I think it's a very valid question. My question was, does your government deny these reports? And if not, how do you justify asking for aid while sending Cubans to die for Vladimir Putin's war of aggression? Canadian taxpayers would like to know that.
Very brief question because of the time.
Well, but I tried to answer the question they're making. I'm sorry if I extend myself in the answers, but I'm simply trying to meet with the interests of the honorable. I Cuba has a very clear position on the Ukrainian conflict, and we support a peace solution. We are not supporting any of the contenders. We are not giving money to Russia or to Ukraine. We are simply asking for peace, and this is our position in United Nations. In many other fora, we have defended this very clearly. It's true that a few people, nationals of Cuba, has been identified as being involved in there. They are mercenaries. They are not members of the armed forces of Cuba, and we have denied very clearly that we are not involved whatsoever in any military actions in this war.
Thank you very much.
Canadian federal politics are absurd. My name's Aaron. This is Canadian Looney. If you've enjoyed our video, smash the like, hit subscribe. That is it. Thank you all so much for watching. Get your Canadian federal politics right here. Ciao for now, gang. Catch you in the next one.